and the future of Canada's oldest company is looking grim. Hudson's Bay says it could liquidate its entire business as soon as next week. The company is looking for financing after filing for creditor protection earlier this month. And as Nicole Williams reports, more than 9,000 jobs are at risk.
Canada's oldest retailer needs a miracle. Hudson's Bay is in serious financial trouble. In a statement Friday night, it now says despite exhaustive efforts, it's only been able to secure the kind of financing that will require the full liquidation of the entire business. That means 80 stores across Canada could start closing as early as next week, and more than 9,000 people are at risk of losing their jobs.
In addition to instant job loss, which is a huge hardship, the payment or non-payment of severance, and given the financial reporting we see publicly, that looks ominous.
It's a dire situation the department store says will happen unless it can find a last-minute solution. The announcement coming just a week after the department store filed for creditor protection.
For the company to announce a potential liquidation so fast after filing before the court is unusually quick and very troubling.
Those court filings show it has only $3 million in hand, but nearly $1 billion in debt.
The Bay hasn't kept up with the times, and it's not going to be around for much longer. This is merely the beginning of the end for them.
It would mark the end of Canada's most iconic and oldest retail institution, around since 1670.
They're really a fundamental part of our historical fabric. And, who can forget the Hudson's Bay blanket?
If the store goes under, there's a long lineup of those who will come looking for compensation, including creditors, landlords, suppliers, current and former employees. The company says it's hopeful for any solution that will help them restructure so that it can save jobs, keep retail locations across Canada, and ultimately save a company with deep historic ties to this country before it's too late. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Toronto.
And Canada's new Prime Minister and his new leaner cabinet aren't wasting any time getting down to business. Mark Carney is already delivering on one leadership campaign promise by scrapping the carbon tax. He's also reviewing a $19 billion contract with the U.S. for the purchase of F-35 fighter jets. Marina von Stackelberg has more from Ottawa.
Canada is looking for alternative options, a different company that it could purchase new jets from. As you mentioned there, it currently has a deal to purchase 88 jets to the tune of $19 billion. These are stealth fighter jets. They are built and maintained in the United States by a large American company, Lockheed Martin. And these are meant to replace Canada's aging CF-18s. But Defense Minister Bill Blair says that Canada is now looking to potentially back out of that contract and purchase the jets somewhere else. The federal government has been under pressure to get out of this deal in the wake of the threats that Donald Trump has been making about Canada, saying that he wants to make Canada the 51st state and take it over with economic force, and also openly poking fun at the Canadian military, saying it's incapable of defending this country. Bill Blair last night on Power and Politics was talking about the instructions he has gotten from the new Prime Minister. Have a listen.
I've discussed this with the Prime Minister, and we're also, it's a conversation taking place with the Canadian Armed Forces. Right now, we have undertaken to purchase 88 of the F-35 fighter jets. It was the fighter jet identified by our Air Force as the platform that they required. But we are also examining other alternatives, whether we need all of those fighter jets to be F-35s or if there might be alternatives. The Prime Minister has asked me to go and examine those things and have discussions with other sources, particularly where there may be opportunities to assemble those fighter jets in Canada, to properly support them and maintain them in Canada.
An option for Canada could be going with a European manufacturer. There is the potential option to have the jets actually built and maintained in Canada instead of the United States. Canada has already put down money for 16 of these F-35s, and so Blair hinted that those would still probably go through. They are set to be delivered in about less than a year, but for the rest of those, another contract could be possible. This is not the only country. Canada is not the only country talking about backing out of deals with Lockheed Martin, the American company. Portugal earlier this week signaled that it was going to cancel its purchase of these F-35s, citing the reliability of the United States.
Ottawa police have charged a man with murder in connection with the death of a 27-year-old man. It happened last night in a suburb southwest of the city. Here's neighbors sharing their shock today after learning of this incident.
You can see I'm still shaking because when we came back from prayer, we saw a body.
Still so scary because I just moved in Ottawa for it's been 2 years living in here. This Barhaven, and I heard before we're very safe.
Police say they responded to the call in Barhaven at about 8 p.m. They say a person was found with life-threatening injuries and died shortly after. A 29-year-old man is facing second-degree murder charges. The homicide unit is investigating. And this week marked 5 years since the COVID-19 pandemic spun our lives upside down. And while much of the world went back to normal, many people are still reeling from the effects of the disease. And today marks International Long COVID Day, meant to highlight those who are still struggling. And as Nama Weingarten reports, along with lasting symptoms, they're dealing with unanswered questions.
Pillowcases line the grounds of Queen's Park. On them, people and children describing how long COVID upended their lives. A 13-year-old who can't go to school anymore, detailing a lost childhood. A woman who had to move back in with her parents. A former paralegal who had to quit her job, wondering, how do you move on from the loss of yourself? As the world marks 5 years since the COVID-19 pandemic started, many consider it a thing of the past. But Saturday's International Long COVID Day is meant to highlight those who are still living with the aftermath of the disease.
This is one of the rare occasions when I've left my house other than for medical appointments.
Anne-Marie used to work as a lawyer until a case of COVID in 2020 left her with fatigue and cognitive issues lasting to this day.
We don't want to be forgotten. We don't want to be left behind because as the world moves on, there's an increasing number of us who are unable to move on because we can't go back to normal.
Even children, like Rebecca's 13-year-old son, haven't been spared.
His abdominal pain also got worse to the point he'd wake me up in the middle of the night, begging me to take away his pain.
It's still unclear just how many Canadians have long COVID, when symptoms last more than 12 weeks after someone has been infected. But a 2023 report from Statistics Canada says roughly 1 in 9 Canadian adults had COVID symptoms long-term. That's an estimated 3.5 million Canadians. The impact can range from mild symptoms to serious disabilities. It can show up as shortness of breath, general pain, and even memory and concentration issues. And with the debilitating symptoms lingering, they're also left with unanswered questions.
And the only certainty we have is uncertainty.
The Public Health Agency of Canada estimates caring for those with long COVID can cost Canadians up to $50 billion. Dr. Angela M. Chung is running a trial to find the solutions, but she says there's still a way to go.
We don't have the whole picture, so we have different parts of a puzzle, basically. We don't have a cure.
And while we still haven't nailed down exactly why some get long COVID while others don't, Canada's chief science advisor says time is of the essence.
Given that the virus is with us, is circulating with us, it means that more people are going to be suffering from these conditions.
Events like this one are taking place all over Canada, with the Canadian COVID Society encouraging people to write to their local MPPs and advocate for increased funding for research, health services, and support programs for those still struggling. Nama Weingarten, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, Ontario measles cases are spiking to their highest level in more than a decade. The number of new cases in the province has grown to 173 in recent days, bringing the total number of confirmed cases to 350 so far since last October. Dr. Isaac Bogosh is an infectious diseases specialist at Toronto General Hospital. He has more on what you can do if you have questions about your own vaccination records.
We should not be seeing outbreaks of this magnitude in Canada in 2025. It's just unacceptable. We have most Canadians up to date on their routine childhood immunizations. And, in general, we're pretty good, but we do have pockets of under-vaccination in the country. And this is such a transmissible virus, it will find and exploit those pockets. If people have any questions or issues about this, do I need a second dose? Did I get a second dose? The best thing to do is, number one, talk to your family physician. The next best thing to do is, number two, talk to a public health clinic. Some people might need blood work. to see if you're up to date and you have antibodies. Some people might get a dose regardless. Some people might say, you know what, you're okay, you don't need it. It's very individualized, but there's physicians, public health experts, nurse practitioners, and pharmacists who are very capable in addressing those questions.
Toronto crews are holding their first pothole blitz of the year, with hundreds of workers doing as many repairs as possible for 24 straight hours.
Fixing a pothole is such a small thing maybe, but it's a huge thing when you consider safety for people who are walking, cycling, whatever mobility device, or driving.
After the winter that we had, when it's so cold and then the temperatures start to warm, you really see potholes come out all over the city. So we're going to be out at it, and we'll be out at the rest of the year, but the springtime is when we really kind of double down our efforts.
Officials say the city has already filled more than 53,000 potholes this year. 80% of those spotted by city patrollers out on the road, and the rest were called into the 311 line. They also say crews are applying an equity lens to the repairs, checking in on neighborhoods where they get fewer calls, but that still have plenty of potholes to fill. And Sofia Cambalia joining us now with the first look at your forecast. So Sofia, I guess it's already time for us to whip out those umbrellas, eh?
Yeah, we went from winter to spring, even summer-like weather, along with everybody's fifth favorite season, pothole season. Let's talk about the spring and summer weather right now. The special weather statement out for much of southern Ontario for a rainy and windy, boisterous system that will not only bring summer-like weather to the south, is continuing to bring winter-like weather along with the freezing rain warning and snowfall warning rather to the north. Winds will also be a big part of the story, especially into Sunday morning in advance of this round 2 system that will be a Sunday event. Winds could be anywhere from 80 to 100 kilometers an hour as this really intense southerly flow brings up this low pressure system. It's a symptom of the big monster storm stateside that's brought a deadly rash of tornadoes, dust storms, wildfires. We're getting the tail northern end of this, along with a cold front that will have colder, snowier conditions in behind for parts of northern Ontario, along with an on and off day of heavy showers to the south. There's the 10 to 20 centimeters for those of you in parts of northwestern Ontario, along with a few odd rumbles of thunder and 15 to 30 millimeters of rain for much of a rainy Sunday. As you mentioned, the umbrellas coming up in the long range. We'll talk more about that rash of severe weather stateside, how it plays into our conditions, summer-like warmth this weekend, and then a cool down on Monday. Gregory.
Thanks, Sophia.
You're welcome.
Now towards the edge of the box, looks to pick out Bernadeschi. Bernadeschi against Gutman. The cross is a good one, and it's knotted in by DeAndre Kerr.
Toronto FC hosted their first home opener against Chicago Fire today. Fans hoping for their first win of the season after 2 losses and a draw so far this year. Taking the lead with a goal from DeAndre Kerr, the Reds tried to hold on, but Chicago put 2 in the back of the net for the win and Toronto's 3rd loss. World leaders attended a virtual summit today aimed at strengthening international support for Ukraine in its war with Russia. It comes as the United States pushes for a ceasefire deal between the two sides. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney was among those in attendance. CBC's Krish Reyes brings us details on what exactly was discussed.
Good afternoon. This morning I convened the largest, strongest group of countries yet behind a just and lasting peace in Ukraine.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer convened dozens of world leaders for a virtual summit to bolster support for Ukraine amidst a U.S. proposed ceasefire deal. In attendance, European partners, Canada, Australia, and President Vladimir Zelensky.
We agreed we will keep increasing the pressure on Russia, keep the military aid flowing to Ukraine, and keep tightening the restrictions on Russia's economy to weaken Putin's war machine and bring him to the table.
The UK convened summit comes amidst tension between the US and Ukraine following a disastrous meeting at the White House more than 2 weeks ago between the two leaders and President Trump's public support for a deal with Russia. Earlier this week, the US tabled the 30-day ceasefire proposal. It was accepted by Ukraine.
Enough people have died, so we'll see what happens with regard to all of it. But I'm getting from the standpoint about a ceasefire and ultimately a deal, some pretty good vibes coming out of Russia.
On social media, Trump also announced a new envoy to Ukraine, General Keith Kellogg, a retired military general who served under Trump's first administration. Trump wrote that Kellogg will deal directly with President Zelensky, adding that the two leaders know each other well and have a good working relationship. During the UK-led meeting, Zelensky called on European allies to consider putting troops in his country.
The contingent must be stationed on Ukrainian soil. And this is a security guarantee for Ukraine and a security guarantee for Europe.
Zelensky also added that it's too early to talk about concessions in territory. Earlier this week, President Vladimir Putin said he's open to the Trump ceasefire proposal, but has stopped short of signing off on it.
Ukraine has accepted an unconditional ceasefire. So Putin could go ahead and do that, but clearly he doesn't want to, as I said, because he's stalling for time. He's trying to grab more land back.
The UK is expected to convene another meeting next week with military planners in support of Ukraine's security. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
And at least 17 people are dead after a series of tornadoes overnight in the U.S. Midwest and South. The damage became clearer this morning. 10 of the deaths were in Missouri. It's unclear how many people may have been injured. At least 26 suspected tornadoes were reported. The National Weather Service reported powerful thunderstorms across several states. The system has also created dust storms and worsened wildfires. We'll be right back. Stay with us. If you've been seeing Jedi, superheroes, or anime characters in downtown Toronto today, no, you're not going crazy. They're likely on their way to the Metro Toronto Convention Centre because Toronto Comic Con is back for another year. As the CBC's Clara Pasica reports, it means a whole lot more to some than just donning a costume.
From Ghostbusters to video game characters, the shy and the confident, one message unites these Comic-Con attendees. They're all here for each other.
It's nice to be able to interact with a bunch of people. Just come here, have fun. Everyone here is super nice. They're really accepting.
Do things you're scared of, and the people are really nice. And yeah, push yourself out of your comfort zone because it's really fun.
Being around like-minded people where you can just feel free and open and you get to just be a nerd, and it's a really good feeling. So and of course being able to see the vendors, I like that too.
I just like seeing the other cosplayers and just kind of hanging out, just meeting new people, you know.
Don't be nervous because everyone here is so nice.
Fans are also helping fuel the local economy.
We're putting people in restaurants, we're putting people in hotels. A lot of the retailers and artists that we present on our show floor are local. They're local to Toronto, so we're really supporting local economics as well.
This year's Comic-Con comes at a time of uncertainty for some of these Canadian vendors, some with customers in the U.S. While there's worry about the potential impact of the tariff war dragging on and dragging down their bottom line, some hope the buy local wave will help.
Times are tough, but we try to do our best. But most of the people are actually happy that they're actually buying local Canadian products.
Being able to be part of the community is what is going to get us through anything, whether it is the pandemic or the tariffs. Coming together as a community as a whole is what is going to get us through it.
For those looking to enter the cosplaying community for the first time, finding a superhero to help you out isn't hard.
What could I quickly do to make my outfit more Supergirl?
Well, I definitely think as substitute for the jacket, I think we could turn this into a lovely Supergirl cape.
If anyone's planning on making any last-minute plans, this event runs all weekend long, so there's still a room for you here at Comic-Con. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
And police services, community organizations are sharing safety tips, reminding folks celebrating St. Patrick's Day this weekend to drive sober or plan a safe ride home. And Mad Canada launching a new program in Toronto, handing out coasters to bars across the city with discount codes for rideshare apps.
I hope everybody has a good time. It's the day to be Irish, and a good time also means getting home safely for you and your friends and everybody else on the road. So let's celebrate.
The Toronto Parade kicks off rain or shine at noon on Sunday. Marching from St. George Station to Sankofa Square, organizers recommend catching a glimpse from the square for the best sights. They suggest packing in an umbrella and a coat, with booths along the route stocked with hundreds of gloves just in case the weather turns. And speaking of weather, Sophia is back with us for a look at your forecast for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, rain or shine being the operative words there. Hopefully the luck of the Irish is with you if you're heading out to any of the events. This weekend, there's a lot of green on the map behind me. Rain is the name of the game. 20 to 40 millimeters for some of you around the Huron shores, 30 to 50 up towards the Nickel Belt. This is a pretty boisterous, potent system that's coming up from stateside. It will also feature snow to the north end. We will unpack all of this for you. Let's talk about right now, though, because there is some gold at the end of the rainbow. 20 degrees, nearly, for those of you in Windsor, 17 in London. These are current conditions right now. 18 in St. Catharines and 14 in Ottawa. We had a really nice clearing and burst of warmth and southerly flow in between the rumbles of thunder this morning and some of the showers that could come into the overnight. This has boosted our temperature substantially. Look at our overnight conditions into tonight, even just around the Golden Horseshoe. These temperatures are about 10 to 15 degrees higher than our normal daytime high. Not only do we have this summer and spring-like warmth, we have some of the active weather to go along with it as well. We mentioned some of the rain on Sunday. It is not going to be an all-day washout. There will be periods, though, of heavy rain and even some rumbles of thunder. This was a really intense line of storms stateside, not only last night where there was a rash of tornadoes, but also ongoing as we speak right now. We're getting the top end of this. We're also getting some pretty intense winds, not only over the last 24 hours. We've recorded a few 70-kilometer-an-hour gusts into southwestern Ontario, but into tomorrow morning, the winds will be especially intense, could be gusting upwards to 100 kilometers an hour, along with this real southerly flow. Okay, here's the icing on the cake. We actually hit Canada's warmest temperature of the year so far. It was in Sarnia just a couple hours ago. We hit our first 20.6 in Sarnia. So there's the glass half full look. Meanwhile, it's really cold at the northern edge of this rainy system. Yes, you will have the rain and thunderstorms into parts of the south. As we mentioned, north of the Nickel Belt, Timmins up to northwestern Ontario. This is a snowstorm and a freezing rain event. And then have a look at Monday before I show you the rest of the week. Cold front comes through and really drops our temperatures substantially. You're looking at more seasonal values. It will feel quite chilly after this warm weekend, along with the snow in the north. In fact, there's two cool downs this upcoming work week. Not only Monday, we uptick again midweek, and then we're cool with more cold air in the reservoir into next weekend. Gregory.
Well, here's hoping you have a great place to celebrate St. Paddy's Day. May the luck of the Irish be with you, Sophia.
Yeah, and a green umbrella.
There you go. Thank you very much. That's our show for you tonight. Thanks for watching. And